Love Lost by Jace Masters. As I slowly opened my eyes, weary from a night's rest that had felt better than any in recent memory, I immediately noticed something was off. My head was pounding and my arms wouldn't move. Naturally, assuming I had once again fallen down in a drunken stupor and slept in a position that would leave them deprived of fresh blood flow, I expected the tingling sensation to start up as I willed my arms to move. I encountered something different, however. They weren't unwilling or bloodless. Something was holding them in place. I moved my aching head over to see what was causing the restraint. Had I somehow lodged myself in between the metallic spokes of the bed? Had I got myself tied up in my own covers? As I gazed upward at the state of my hands, the truth was similar, yet vastly more alarming at the same time. My hands were tied using cloth unfamiliar to me and foreign to my bedroom. Thick knots held my arms in place against the thick slats of metal that made up the headboard. As I intended to move myself upward, I noticed that, like my arms, I was also unable to move my legs more than a few centimeters to the sides. Any upward movement was met with immediate resistance. I'd been tied down on my own bed in my sleep? As I lay there groggily struggling against my bindings, desperately wondering what I'd gotten up to the night before to end up in this situation, the answer to that question presented itself as a familiar but wholly unexpected figure opened the door to my bedroom and stepped through the doorway. As Nina walked into the room, her head buried in her phone, I was taken aback at first. I hadn't seen her since we broke up last May. Soon, though, my surprise was overtaken by confusion and some measure of anger. How dare she come into my place unannounced? As I was about to lay into her, however, another thought and feeling crept over me, like a cold drop of water trickling down your neck. I was naked. What had I done? What if we... No. I pushed the thought from my mind. I would never, not after what she had pulled. What are you doing here? My voice sounded frail and cracked, and I felt the headache swell up within me. What do you mean, my love? She replied as she moved past the foot of the bed, eyes still glued to the screen. I mean, what the actual hell are you doing in my house? Don't you remember? Her reply was calm, unaffected by my raised tone. We had a wonderful evening and an even better night. Bullshit! My reaction seemed to trigger something in her as she lifted her eyes from her phone screen for the first time and looked at me. Now, she produced in the same calm manner as she walked to the side of the bed. That's no way to talk. She bent over then, grabbed something off of the floor and shot her arm into my face. What the... My words were cut short as she stuffed whatever she had grabbed deep into my mouth. A taste of sweat mixed with a soapy aroma of perfume clung to the smooth cloth now stuck to the roof of my mouth, pushing my tongue down, preventing me from moving it out of the way. Much better. The glint in her eyes as she spoke turned my blood ice cold. There was something wrong there, something broken. Can't have my future husband and father of my children talk back to me like that, now can I? Another chill hit the back of my spine at the words. What the hell happened? And why couldn't I remember anything? Despite my best effort, the cloth remained lodged in my mouth, its scent and taste enveloping my mouth and nostrils. I had a good feeling I knew what she had used for the gag, and the thought was not at all settling my stomach. She sat down beside the bed as she cast her eyes back to her phone's screen. Remember how happy we were here? She turned the screen for a brief moment, showing a picture of the two of us at a resort. I remembered the trip, and it had been good, until we came back and I found out she'd been attempting to get pregnant by puncturing all the condoms we'd been using. Thank God I always checked them and brought my own. Oh, and remember this one? She turned the screen again, showing her a familiar pub we both visited a lot when we were together. I saw myself a little in the distance, laughing at something my neighbor had said, but obviously not with her. My heart began to sink as the revelation hit. She had been stalking me ever since we broke up. And this one's just brilliant. Again the screen flashed my way, now depicting her standing near me as I leaned a little too heavily on the bar. This picture, that was last night. The memory came flooding back in an instant, hurting my already racked brain as it did. I was out with Dave and James watching the game. We had a few too many and I decided to go home. After that, things got fuzzy. But this is my favorite. I looked at the screen in horror as I saw a picture of myself on my bed, tied down, naked, and passed out. Nina's face was glowing with joy as she appeared to be straddling my unconscious body. I violently moved my entire body, attempting to get loose. She had taken advantage of me, raped me. Now, you seem to enjoy that one too, you know. She smiled as her attention focused on the phone again. Though you did need a little help to get there. But I took care of that too, so now we can be a family. The audacity of this bitch. Taking advantage of me and now professing that it was all so we could become a family? Again, I strained against my bindings, feeling some movement and progress on my left hand in particular. I began wildly thrashing about in order to loosen myself. Hey! She stood up from the chair beside the bed, placing her phone down and grabbing something else as she did. I looked at her hand coming up from the ground holding a large, wide-bladed kitchen knife. I instinctively held my movement. Behave. I could feel my heart racing. She was going to kill me, I was sure of it. Why else would she have that there? I needed to get out of my bindings, but without her noticing. She moved the blade over my naked body and let it hover. We wouldn't want anything bad to happen, would we? She moved it down my body. Especially down here. Her paws lingered in the air for a moment as I relaxed my body, hoping she would at least withdraw the weapon. See? That's better, she said, smiling again. Besides, I thought you'd be happy. You always said you wanted to become a father. She moved back and seemed to be intent on retrieving the phone once again as she reached for the floor. I took the momentary break in her concentration to work my left hand against the cloth that was holding it. It was loose enough that I could likely get my hand free if I pulled hard enough. Unfortunately, the rest of the restraints would take some more time and movement in order to get free. Beyond that, lying on top of my bed, wearing nothing but what she tied me down in, had left me feeling cold. Despite the adrenaline surging through me, I would likely not be able to break free fast enough to avoid her going for the knife again. I needed to think of something else to distract her. Why so quiet, my love? Have you nothing to say to the future mother of your children? Thought hit me and I began to cough. Muffled by the cloth in my mouth, breathing was hard, but I felt it might give me some time. At first she ignored me, staring into the phone screen as she swiped through what I could only imagine was a collection of pictures of last night's events. As I coughed more and progressively louder and wilder, she finally responded by putting down the phone again and reaching over. Now I don't want you choking on me. Not until we know this worked. So I'm going to remove my panties from your mouth, okay? She reached out her hand. No shouting or anything like that. Be a good man. Still coughing, I nodded until she pulled the cloth from the back of my mouth, involuntarily causing an actual coughing fit. Glad of the fresh air, I continued pretending to cough, but stifled the worst of it as I spoke softly. Water! My voice cracked and must have sounded sufficiently weak, as her immediate response was to get up, grabbing the knife as she did. Of course, honey. I'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. As soon as she had moved out of the room, I began working my left hand free, feeling near instant success at the first pull. Using my free hand, I was able to undo my right hand reasonably quickly as well, but as I forced my body to sit up, I felt the drowsiness hit full on. Whatever she had done to me last night was still affecting me now. I loosely grabbed for the bindings on my legs, but was struggling to claw them free with my cold, bloodless hands. As I worked away, I heard the water from the bathroom tap run for a short moment and stop. Convinced I had only seconds left before she returned, I pulled my legs in as hard as I could while holding the knots open with my hands. The give was much more than I thought it would be, and I became convinced that I could step out of the bindings if I wanted to. My moment of victory was cut short as I heard Nina's footsteps approaching. I laid myself back down as fast as I could and grabbed onto the cloth bindings with both hands as I did, hoping she wouldn't notice that change in the bindings. Not a second after I laid back, Nina was in the doorway, knife and glass in hand. You look flushed, my love. Are you okay? Feigning strain, I replied, It's just that this is a lot to take in, you know? I don't remember anything, so I think I overreacted. Oh, I'm so happy to hear you say that, honey. We'll work it out, you and I. She moved back to her chair beside the bed and placed the knife down beside her. Now, let me soothe that poor throat of yours. I'm surprised you're doing so well with what you had to drink last night. Knowing my moment was fast approaching, I lay still as I could, while she moved in holding the glass of water out. Oh, you know I can hold my liquor. I know, that's why I gave you a special little cocktail to enjoy. My eyes widened on their own accord as I shirked back from the glass. You did what? I asked, keeping my voice as calm as possible. Well, nothing much, just some added ingredients to make last night a little more enjoyable for both of us. I didn't hear any complaints. Now drink up. She moved a glass closer, bending over the bed as she did. Now was my chance. Using my freed hands, I grabbed onto her shoulders and pulled her onto the bed as hard as I could. She let out a yelp as her light frame easily gave way in the already unstable position. I felt the cold of the water hit my skin as a glass tumbled from her hand onto the bed and spilled its contents along the way. Her weight landed on top of me, knocking some of the wind out of me, but I kept grasping for her in every attempt to pull her further from the side of the bed while wildly thrashing about with my legs in order to free them as well. Her response came a moment after she landed on top of me. Bracing her fall with her hand, she bounded further onto the bed but thrust her knees forward, landing one on my stomach and the other in a much more sensitive region. As her knee made contact, at first I registered only the touch. A moment later, the waves of pain from the impact made their way up my spine, almost knocking me out instantly. Out of sheer terror and dread of what would happen if I didn't manage to hold on to consciousness, I jerked my legs up and to the right to get footing underneath me. The soft carpet felt like a relief to me as I moved my weight in an attempt to stand up. Before I could, however, she was on top of me, her arms around my shoulders and neck in an attempt to pull me back. Disoriented and still reeling from the earlier hit to my groin, I was unable to get up and instead fell back to a seated position while she jumped to the foot end of the bed and dove forward. Before I even knew what was happening, I felt a slight tug on my arm followed by a sense of warmth and a dull stinging pain. I looked down to see a large gash had been opened up, spilling crimson out onto myself, the bed, and the floor. The shock of the sight brought me back to my senses as I looked at Nina holding the large knife facing toward me. If you don't want us to be together as a family, fine, but no one else will have you either then. She lunged, knife outward. Now wide awake and brimming with adrenaline, I dove to the right in an attempt to avoid the knife. Another tug, and another stream of warmth preceded the pain of being sliced again, this time on my left thigh. As her body moved past mine, I grabbed onto her wrists and held them tight, using her momentum to throw her back onto the bed. Her right hand carried the blade, so my priority lay there. As she landed, I attempted to wrest it from her hands, causing the blade to nick me again on my hand several times. I moved my body on top of hers, using my weight to restrict her movement. She screamed in anger as she attempted to knee me in the groin again. Keeping my focus on the blade, I blocked her legs and sat down on her hips. Her small frame was no match for mine, but the knife and her grip on it were still more dangerous than anything. As we struggled back and forth, both covered in my blood, I felt anger well up inside me, an anger I hadn't felt in a long time. She had used me, she had tied me down, drugged me, abused me, and now she was trying to kill me. My scream of anger joined with hers as we both struggled for control of the knife. Her sounds were becoming more desperate as time went on. The mix of my strength and the slipperiness of my blood covering the blade in her hands were wearing her down until I felt another sharp tug on my chest and instinctively pushed down. Her reaction was instantaneous. She let go and stopped struggling. As I looked into her emerald eyes, I saw only fear and pain reflected back. Still on top of her, I looked down. Beyond the thin line of red on my chest trickling crimson down on her now ruined dress, I saw a rapidly growing blot of dark burgundy, nearly black fluid, stain the cloth's original yellow and orange hues. The hilt of the knife was protruding from her abdomen at the center of the stain. Why? Her voice was suddenly weak and soft. My mind shifted from anger to concern. I moved off of her and to the side of the bed where I knew she had placed the phone down. As I grabbed it, I immediately hit the emergency call button before looking back at Nina's now slumped figure still lying on the bed, chest rapidly moving up and down. After a brief connecting tone, a voice on the other end of the line spoke. "Emergency? Which service do you require?" "Ambulance and police. Someone's been stabbed." "Okay, sir, please stay on the line. Can you give me your number and address?" "Yes, 085-312-87965 and 52 Elmhurst Lane. Please hurry. The emergency services are on their way. Can you tell me more, sir? As I looked at Nina lying on the bed, her breathing seemingly slowing down, the knife still embedded up to its hilt in her abdomen, I explained the situation. How I didn't remember anything from the night before, how I woke up tied to the bed, how she had threatened me with a knife, how we struggled, and how she was now lying there, dying on my bed. I hardly noticed the tears streaming down my face as I spoke, and I never even registered the knocking on the door and subsequent banging as the police entered the house in search of us. I was told they found both of us unconscious in the bedroom. Defensive wounds indicated a struggle with Nina as the aggressor. Coupled with the ligature marks on my arms and legs, I was ruled to be the victim of an assault. A rape kit proved she had indeed had her way with me while I was unconscious, and the pictures on her phone sealed the deal completely. To this day, I'm still not sure if I would have preferred her to live or die, but I do know that this way at least I don't have to worry about her ever again. The EMT that treated me after I regained consciousness for a moment told me Nina kept repeating the same words over and over again until she died, from blood loss apparently. It could have been wonderful. Even after all that, can you believe it? If you have any questions or remarks, please feel free to leave them in the comments. Thank you for watching, and a special thanks to my Patreon supporters for making these stories a reality. If you've enjoyed this story and want to support the creation of more, please consider joining my Patreon and unlocking exclusive stories, behind-the-scenes content, virtual hangouts, and more. If you enjoyed this story, please share it, and check out my other stories, and subscribe for more tales yet to be told.